Is this the horse of 2012?
Wisedan, super impressive Breeders' Cup Mile. Wisedan won it.
It's tough to say no after his track record performance. This youngster completes a perfect freshman season. Is it too early to pursue the crown? Of course not.
And Shanghai Bobby, that's a Nations All-Heart winner.
And with the big money on the line, Fort Larned laid it all out there for his connections in the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Fort Larned has won it. That move on the far turn, the deciding factor.
Pursuit of the Cup starts right now.
Skywalker is still there. Carrying a huge upset looming here. And they're coming down to the finish. And it is pleasantly perfect.
Raven Cass and Frankie Dettori have won the Classic.
Yata, what a performance. One we'll never forget.
Brought to you by Fasig-Tipton, home of North America's first thoroughbred auction company. No one has a longer pedigree. And TwinSpires.com, featuring TwinSpires TV, TwinSpires Pro, and smartphone wagering with live video.
55,000 plus on hand on Breeders' Cup Championship Saturday to witness Fort Larned win the Breeders' Cup Classic, and no worse for wear the morning after. And I'm sure he'll get a few more of those, a couple of carrots or two for this year's Classic winner. Well, so many storylines involved in this year's Classic. Ian Wilkes getting his, Brian Hernandez picking up a Breeders' Cup Classic win on his 27th birthday, as well as Game On Do just coming out flat on a track that he was unbeaten on here at Santa Anita. And to discuss all of these races from Championship Saturday, the gentlemen that have been with me every step of the way, Jeff Siegel and Richard Migliore. And Mig, every single time that I look back at that race with Fort Larned, I mean, it amazes me that this horse was able to dig back in with Mucho Macho Man and Mike Smith bearing down on him.
Well, he was like the older version of Shanghai Bobby. When he got engaged, you could see he was not going to let Mucho Macho Man by. And these two horses put a lot of separation to the third-place finisher flat out. Fort Larned took it to them and outran them at every point of call.
He joins Black Tie Affair, Siegel, and Ghost Sapper, now 3 wire-to-wire winners in the Breeders' Cup Classic.
And that's the theme from these last couple of days. Speed was dominant, and certainly Fort Larned in his tactical speed able to make the lead. We saw that in the previous 2 days where front-running route horses really had an edge, and Fort Larned took advantage of that. But there were other horses in this race that could have gone to the front. He was the most athletic. He had the quickness, and he had the ability to get there where he wanted to be. And then he was able to reach back and find something more when challenged throughout the stretch drive by Mucho Macho Man, who really did want to win. And those two were well clear of the others. A terrific addition of the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Let's go down to Kate and Bradar, who was out this morning for all of the reactions morning after, and it was still an emotional morning for Ian Wilkes. The emotions not wearing off.
No, not wearing off at all, although it was a little subdued this morning as well. Quite honestly, I think a lot of the connections, even those that won Breeders' Cup races, are just a little bit tired, which is understandable, but many have already headed home. Wisedan among them back to Kentucky. Groupie Doll is heading back in a little while, along with Fort Larned and Ian Wilkes, who had a somewhat sleepless night and is still in a bit of a daze. His reaction the day after his Breeders' Cup Classic win, topping our Gainesway Farm Pursuit of the Cup final news of the day.
The important thing was the break, when we got a good break. That was the whole key, If we broke bad, we were in trouble. And that's the whole key to the race, I think, was the break. And he broke sharp yesterday and, going down the backside and he started to move at the 5/8. I said, good, we're right. I was hoping for the finish line, because Mucho Man ran a great race. Kathy Ripfo did a tremendous job with that horse. Boy, he ran huge. And but just to get there, it's just, like I said, it just hasn't sunk in. I don't know. It's amazing just to have a horse, and the horse take care of you and do that for you. Brian's a very good rider. He's always shown that. He's always rode a very, he's put horses in position to win races. He just didn't have enough horse before, so I had to find him a better horse. And the confidence, he trusts the horse, and that's the key, and the same as I can't train without a good horse, he can't ride without a good horse, and he trusts him and let the horse do it, and it's been fun. There was 3 of us, we were talking last week, about a week ago, 10 days ago at Keeneland, Buff Bradley, Charlie and I, and we said we had to go out and get the 3, win 3 of them, not just settle on one. Well, when Buff won and then Charlie won, man, that was a little more added pressure to me. I had to hold my end up. So I was under a little pressure there, but no, it was great. You know, tremendous horsemen, both of them, Buff and Charlie, you know, and good friends too.
Each year's very unique, you know, and they come together, you know, when you're sitting there at the draw and they're pulling the names out of the hat, you realize how competitive the races are, and it just says a lot for them to run that well against that kind of competition.
Let's start with Tapazar first of all, how he came out of the race and your reaction to the race.
Well, he came out of the race in really good shape. You know, I'm very proud of the race that he ran, and it was a very big win for the home team.
What will happen next for him?
Well, that'll be decided. You know, obviously this was the very big spot for him. Proud of how he ran when it mattered the most.
You had to be almost feeling like it was almost a win with My Miss Aurelia.
Well, very proud of how hard they ran. Of course, you know, little thing here, little thing there. You know, like you said, 3 seconds, but they ran very good races and went for a lot on the line.
Very proud. At the same time, it's a little frustrating to be second, but you know, he ran a huge race. I had every faith in him that he would, but then, you know, as you get a little closer and the race is so competitive, certainly it's easy to question yourself a little bit. But he ran huge. He's a very special horse, and it took a really good horse to beat him too. I hoped he would run like he did, you know, but you just never know coming off that kind of a layoff. But you know, he's an amazing horse. He's the best horse I've ever trained. He's been spectacular in the morning training, and I knew he was fit enough. It was just a question of, you know, the mental fitness or whatever you like to call it. It's just tough to come back off that kind of a break. I'm not in a hurry to run him back. He ran a huge race yesterday. I'd like to give him plenty of time to get over it. Dubai was always was the original idea, and I think that's probably what we'll stick with. So I would imagine it will be one race before we go to Dubai, possibly over there.
And we may see not only Animal Kingdom in Dubai, but also Royal Delta and Wise Dan, those connections indicating that's the major goal in March. Also from the Mott Barn, confirmation that To Honor and Serve has been retired. He has already shipped out to Kentucky. The majority of the Mott horses, or the remaining Mott horses that is, will head to Payson Park in Florida tomorrow. And it's a similar plan heading to Florida tomorrow for the Todd Pletcher horses, including Shanghai Bobby, winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, with the exception of In Lingerie, who is already headed to Kentucky for the Fasig-Tipton sale. That's true of many of the Breeders' Cup contenders, including Dust and Diamonds, as well as Breeders' Cup winners Zagora. They're already in Kentucky. Some of the connections, in fact, on a Fasig-Tipton charter that headed to Kentucky last night. As far as the rest of the horses from New York and Kentucky, they're set to ship out to other parts, maybe even Florida, beginning tomorrow. And the good news from the Mucho Macho camp, that Mucho Macho Man will race again next year. So a lot of these Breeders' Cup heroes we will look forward to seeing in action next year, Scott.
That is great news, Caton, and that really gets you keyed up for 1 year from now, again, here at Santa Anita Park, boys. But let's get back to the Breeders' Cup Classic. We are going to take you gate to wire in yesterday's $5 million feature. Field of 12, the favorite was Game On Dude. As we checked the final odds, he went off at odds of 6-5, Richie. And you've got to take us to the start of this race, because this is where this race was won for one horse and lost for the other.
Yeah, his fate was basically sealed the first step out of the gate when Fort Larned broke so alertly and actually shifted out just enough to place Game On Dude in tight. Rafael Bejarano ducked in, and then Brian Hernandez just easing back over and laid him right there in that pocket, in a position Game On Dude's not really comfortable with. But then I think it was compounded by the fact that Rafael Bejarano's already looking for a place to get out, and they're stacked up 5 across the track.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he was doing here. I mean, he angled the horse out. I'm talking about Rafael. And then he puts him in what he thinks is in a good spot. And if you look at that start, though, and you're right, Richie, that was not ideal for Game On Dude. But you know something? This is a championship race. That's not supposed to get you beat if you're the 6-5 favorite in the Classic race. You got to be able to overcome a little bit of adversity. And Game On Dude, if that's what got him beat, then he's not the horse I thought he was.
You can see the horses sitting up front. I mean, they're just cruising along. That's Fort Larned and Mucho Macho Man, Richie.
Yeah, and I like what Brian Hernandez did here. He opened his hands, let out a notch, got away from Mucho Macho Man a little bit, and it made Mike Smith have to go after him. And I like when a guy takes it to them. Take them off the bridle. Make them chase you. Make them work to stay with you.
And Fort Larned is just cruising here. He's the kind of horse, and we've seen this in the past, where you give him this kind of trip, and he's going to be very tough. Mucho Macho Man does back him off him a little bit here.
There's Game On Dude going.
He's making a move, but he's being niggled at, and he's not going anywhere near as easy as the horses in front of him. So you can see right here, the Game On Dude has never been the kind of horse that's going to come from 5-6 lengths back anyway. So you could see he was going nowhere, but there was absolutely no late speed that materialized here.
Flat Out's going to rally up and finish a solid third in this race, but this is the match here. They hook up, and now down to the wire you see Brian Hernandez asking, and he just continues to receive from Fort Larned in this situation.
Yeah, in the words of Trevor Diffin, the more he asked, the more he gave. And you could see at about the 16th pole, he was going to hold him safe. And it sure felt like if they went around again, they were going to stay in that position.
Yeah, you got to give it up to the winner and the runner-up. I mean, when you're that far clear of the rest, both horses deserve plaudits. And I thought Flat Out did as well as he could to pick up the pieces and be a distant, although non-threatening third in a race in which nobody from off the pace made any impact whatsoever.
Happy 27th birthday, Brian Hernandez Jr. You will never forget this. There is no question about that. Mucho Macho Man, his trainer, Kathy Ritvo, said, what can you do? He ran a winning race. The other horse was just a great horse today, and that's really how it shaped up. And when you look at the final order of finish, the thing that stands out to me, Jeff, has to be Game On Dude finishing 7th over his home court.
How about give it up to the New York horses? Fort Larned, Mucho Macho Man, Flat Out, and Ron the Greek. They can go back to New York and be proud of that, Richie.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it makes the Jockey Club Gold Cup and the Whitney and the Woodward, all those races look even better.
And Fort Larned making a strong case for Older Champion of the Year here in 2012. When we come back on Pursuit, we will jump into the Speedsters. Take a look at the Sprint Division as well as the Filly and Mare Sprint Division, a division that Groupie Doll just dominated throughout 2012.